to Proles Pod.
Hello and welcome to Proles Pod, your bi-weekly dose of history, politics, and culture, without the liberalism. You can find and follow us on most social media platforms at Proles Pod and on TikTok at proles.pod. If you want to help us reach more people, leaving 5-star reviews on any of the various podcast catchers is the best way to do that. If you want to help us with our vision, you can subscribe to our Patreon over at patreon.com/ProlesPod. There's a lot of great stuff there, such as early access to main feed episodes, bonus episodes, study guides, surprise drops, and more, with more on the way. This episode is brought to you by the Monsanto Corporation. Today, we're going to be talking about my absolute favorite subject, which is Vietnam.
Vietnam is raised actually existing socialism, not the real thing, but the podcast.
This is my Roman Empire.
Yes, that's their Roman Empire.
But first, which of the proles do we have with us today?
Dustin.
You've got Jeremy.
Tony is probably away recording his other podcast, Actually Existing Socialism.
We're using his Zencaster.
Communism is Win-Win Zencaster. And our guest experts, my second favorite Vietnamese revolutionary, of course, second only to Ho Chi Minh, it's Luna Oy, and her husband, equally revolutionary, just not lucky enough to be born Vietnamese, it's EJ. Hi, guys.
Welcome.
Hello. I'm Luna. Hi, everybody.
Oh my God, I'm crying.
Oh my God. Ray, I believe in you.
Can you cry a little bit further from the mic, please?
Just for the show.
Okay. So Luna and EJ,
we're very happy to be here.
I can't believe that there is a person alive on the tanky internet who doesn't know who the two of you are. But if somehow there is someone, would you be willing to please introduce yourselves?
Hi. This is Luna. I'm a Vietnamese, communist living in Vietnam, and I have a YouTube channel called Luna Oy where I talk a lot about Vietnam, the history, and what's going on right now. And also, I've been translating the curriculum of Marxism-Leninism for Vietnamese students in the last few years, and the 2 parts are already out. Please check it out. Part 1 is about dialectical materialism, and part 2 is historical materialism. And I am currently working on part 3, which is about the political economy, which is the most difficult part. So wish me luck.
Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, EJ, it's your turn.
Oh, yeah. I was enthralled with my stunning partner's introduction. I'm EJ. I started the channel Non-Compete, but it's grown into a media collective cooperative, which Luna is instrumental in developing with me. And we also have a couple of other folks that help us with writing and planning and editing and all that kind of stuff. And we talk about communist theory, Marxism. We talk about, of course, dialectical and historical materialism. We are talk about current events, and we do some comedy stuff as well. Haven't had as much... we've had some banger comedies out, I think, lately. We did a little like 1980s VHS send up on thought terminating cliches recently.
Class time with the 90s style.
Well, we're trying to. So we used to do a lot of these puppet shows, which I really love doing, but they were like, our audience is divided because about half of the audience are just like soulless, joyless nerds that. And they're like, we hate the puppet shows. We wish you would just be more serious. And then they seriously would just get like, really bad
You
views.
could do like puppet dramas.
But then like half the other...
The puppets handling really serious...
Yeah, we should do like...
puppet.
Oh my, like Soviet realist puppet.
There's a concept I've been developing, a theoretical concept called the tiresome left, which is just people who like can't help but comment and they've got nothing nice to say. There was a guy who left a bad review on Pearl's Pod back during its initial run because on the copy of Another View of Stalin, which was an out-of-print book at the time, we hired one of our listeners to design the cover, and this person took issue with the version of the hammer and sickle that
Oh my
the person
gosh.
put on the cover. And he was like, don't listen to these people. They obviously have no idea what they're doing. They put the revisionist Khrushchevite hamsick on the cover of their book that is about Stalin. Ignore their perspective. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, first of all, the book has nothing to do with us. We just had it printed because we couldn't get a hold of it anywhere. And what does the cover have to do with anything? The tiresome left. Yeah, the tiresome left.
They literally judged the book by its cover. They did the
And
thing.
then judged us by the cover of the book.
Wow.
We had a similar thing with the hammer and sickle critique because we used to have these jackets.
Yes.
They're like varsity jackets.
Gorgeous.
And there's a hammer and sickle on it. And we got the hammer and sickle from a 19th century, some kind of, I don't know, it was like some proto-communist kind of thing in like South America or something. And it was like, it's very, very old. But then we had like several people say that it was the like Gonzalite Shining Path hammer and sickle, which it was. I mean, like they did use the same thing, but it like was it existed for like decades before
Oh my
the
gosh.
Shining Path. So, and now all the Maoists are going to come after all the Gonzalite Maoists
Yeah.
are going to come after us. So
They were going to do that
You
anyway.
could-
so.
you could
We
feel
will
free to
not cut any of this. This is the value prop of the show.
I mean, I don't even. The thing is, we don't even really like think about that ever. But people were like, "Oh, they must be secret Gonzalites or something." And it's like,
Yeah.
we
Well,
just
wouldn't be a
we just
very well
thought, we
kept
thought it looked
secret.
cool.
The English-speaking left is obsessed with destroying the English-speaking left. So
It's very, very sad.
I mean, a lot of people think we're throwing like I'm not even throwing shade at anybody right now. It's just a fact. It's just something that happened, but people are gonna like
Anything.
read into
The tiresome
it's
left.
funny. It's just funny. We could do that. We could do this whole show just about complaining about the
We
tiresome
could,
left. That
but
could
you
be
guys, I made this outline.
be the
And
subject.
I read
That's
2
true.
books.
It's very
Mm.
important.
Oh yeah, we have to follow
Yeah,
that.
And I want to talk
That's
about
right.
my favorite topic, my Roman Empire.
the authoritarian outline.
Exactly.
Outline authoritarianism.
So back to Vietnam. Coming back to Vietnam. Luna, you recently had a video where you described how the Vietnamese government works. And I was wondering if you could kind of talk us through that, because I feel like I've said this about a lot of different countries on the show since I joined. The way that other governments work is sort of like a black box. And it's very hard for the degenerate Westoid imaginary to fathom how other governments might work. So I wondered if you could explain how things were working before, the recent restructuring, what has changed, and how the changes were decided.
Okay, let me give you a brief summary of the structure and the organization of the government of Vietnam. First of all, from the wartime, let's say from 1975, we had a system of this. We have like 2 levels. What did you say it? Like the local level and then the central level. The central level is the National Assembly. So technically, it's like the National Assembly would be the main one who decides of the big decision for the whole country of Vietnam, like the law and the policies and stuff like that. The local level, before 2025, we had 3 levels of the local like that. We have commune level, and then we have a district level, and then we have provincial level. So the reason why we had that 3 level is because our country after the war, we did not have any like internet or the roads, are like shitty and small. So we had to split into that 3 levels so the information can be reported from the commune level, the grassroots level, to the district. The district level would gather information and report to the provincial level, and then the provincial level will bring up to the national level to discuss, right? So it kind of a lot of time, but it was like suitable for that time when Vietnam did not have internet or good transportation kind of thing. But we've been in the last like 10 years or 15 years, that kind of 3 level of local government kind of slow us down a lot because we have good roads, high quality road transportation and internet too. So suddenly the district, level become like the middleman that we don't need anymore. And for the last few years, the National Assembly of Vietnam been discussing a lot and do the self-critique. Believe it or not, self-critique is a big thing in Vietnam, and it is pretty much a requirement that every single member of the Communist Party and the member of the National Assembly of Vietnam need to do nearly every single day in his life to self-critique. And we did that in the last few years, and we look at what other countries been doing. And okay, we decided that, okay, this is the time for Vietnam to cut down our bureaucracy. And we decided that the middleman, the district level, must be gone. And literally, technically, what we did was we decentralized the local government of Vietnam. All of the tasks that used to belong to district level now pushed down to the commune level. So the commune level have more power now, and the commune level report directly to the provincial level. So it could be bring up to the national level as fast as possible. So that's what we're doing. Vietnam, we are still in the testing phase, so that we only start from July 2025. So it's just been like 5 months for the new level, and there's a lot of things going on right now. And the government explained to us very well that, okay, the reason why we're doing this and how we're doing this, they're very open about like there will be problems. So everybody please expect that there will be problems, but they all temporary, they all short term. Hopefully in 2026, things will be, finalized and would be normal very soon. And I can say that the vast, vast majority of Vietnamese people are pretty much hopeful, and we are being very patient with the government, and we expect problems to happen. So it's just no like social cry out or anything at all. We just like, all right, let's give them a few more months to see. So that is it in Vietnam, and I can tell that we are also moving a lot of things to do it online. So government just built an app. We call it like the ID. VNEID, which is like a Vietnam EID, and every single citizen of Vietnam and foreigners living in Vietnam should have their own ID number with ID app. And supposedly, all of the things that we can do online will become online. It is like a way for Vietnam to first cut down on the bureaucracy. So that for simple tasks like making a new ID, you don't need to go in person and hand in a bunch of paperwork as before. You just do it, apply it online, and then the government will, make a new the result and send it to you online too. Or the second is to cut down on corruption. The bribe, under table money,
Mm-hmm.
because because of the bureaucracy, it takes a long time. So a lot of people just give on the
Little
money.
coffee money.
Exactly. And the government
I
like,
know.
no,
I've
this
paid the
is bad
coffee
thing.
money.
Yep. This is a bad thing, and we are aware of that problem that we have. We're totally aware, and
Mhm.
we admit that we have that problem, and we try to fix it. And the online system is the way for us to fix it. And it is true. I see it with my own eyes that way less kind of bribery happening every day, and very happy about it.
And there are definitely growing pains, like we've had to do some paperwork in our personal lives. And it's kind of funny how sometimes we'll go to the commune level office to get something done, and they'll just be like, we don't really know how to do this yet.
Me and my mom were dealing with some paperwork for our house in my parents' house, and we went to the office and we were like, I'm sorry, I really want to help you, but right now we don't know who next month will deal with this. So can you wait until next month, please?
And then as a foreigner, I have an EID, but as of right now, I'll open the app and it just has my name and it's just empty. There's no buttons to push. It's just like they haven't populated it with anything yet. So, and I had to like file something as a foreigner, and the local office was like, okay, do this on your app, and then Luna had to like screenshot it and send them to it and be like, there are no buttons. There's nothing, he can't do anything on his app. But anyway, yeah, they're working on it. But imagine if the USA tried to do a major overhaul of the entire system of government like this.
Nope.
I mean,
Never would happen.
I can't even imagine it happening. But if it did happen, I mean, you remember when the quote unquote Obamacare website went down, and then everyone acted like it was like the I don't even remember exactly what happened. Like people couldn't even log in or whatever. But people catastrophized, and of course people are catastrophizing here. But it is so far it's been a lot more smooth. Because like they used to have to send it up like 2 level. Like if you submitted a document, they'd have to stamp it, send it up 2 levels, and get a stamp up there, at every level, and then it would have to come back down, get stamped on the way down. Now it only has to go up once and down once, or actually, what I don't know if Luna might have mentioned this, but one of the things they're doing is they're putting as much power as possible at the ward, commune, like really local level. So they actually are going to have they have their own. But they're doing the budgeting at the local level. They're making the big decisions at the local level for things like construction and zoning
Exactly.
and stuff
That's the
like
most
that.
important
And
part where the
so,
commune level have their own budget. Now, before it was the district level who decided that, and it took a long time for the commune. Like for example, there's a broken bridge in a commune, and because the commune doesn't have money, so they had to report to the district level who like have the fund. The district had to go check again and then report to the provincial level, which will then go check again and then like ask for national to agree. So like, gosh, one broken bridge took 2 years to have them to be fixed. But right now, the money, the budget just got sent down to commune level directly. And then like, whenever there's anything problem, the community has the money to fix them as soon as possible. So we see that happen really, really fast. And I think that because of this decentralization and the commune have their own budget kind of thing, Vietnam just successfully, can you believe it? Vietnam successfully eliminated all the substandard houses in Vietnam. Every single substandard houses in Vietnam are gone, and the government built those houses for free to people. So it's really amazing. It's really amazing to see. And if you go to Vietnam right now, and especially go to rural area, you will see like nearly everywhere there are construction right there somehow, somewhere, because the government either fund the people to fix their house if it's like broken house, and if their house were destroyed by natural disaster, the government built for free for you. So, and our original plan was like in 2024 we decided to start that program, and we expected at that time to be finished by 2030, but actually by early 2026 already finished. It's like way faster than what we expected. And one of the main reason why we can do it so fast was because we use the army to do that. So instead of paying a construction company, the freaking capitalists, what the government did was like they send the money for the commune to buy the like construction kind of cement and rocks and things, and then they send the army to go build a house for free. So there's no capitalist company related almost at all. So that is why we did it so fast. We did it, man. Did it. Done.
You didn't say this in your video, Luna, so I'm not sure if you agree or not, but I wonder if you feel like the allowing to remove the second layer, right, and allowing there to just be 2 levels seems to me at least a sort of a reflection of the raising of people's consciousness, that they are at the commune level, at the ward level, able to take on more responsibility and decision making and to think more long term, the way that the socialist project sort of requires of us. You know what I mean? Again, I'm obviously Vietnam glazing because I'm a Vietnamese nationalist. That is my political tendency and position. But I wonder if it's also like reflective that like the people's consciousness, the consciousness of the masses has increased insofar as they can reduce the need of the government scaffolding and be able to take on more responsibility by themselves. The withering away of the state, at least in a small way.
Yeah, you are right. You are right because before, the education of Vietnam was not really high right after the war. It took us a long time to educate our next generation, about how to, manage a country and the goal and the mission of how being a communist. And like it needs a lot of education to run the country. That was why in the old time, in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, we had only enough resources to train that many people. So we put them into the leaders of the commune and the district and then the provincial. But right now, everybody is well educated. That's why now we could do the decentralization of the government, because the people now are very well aware and know how to do the management of our country. So yeah.
It wasn't that long ago that like what 90% of Vietnamese people were illiterate, right, Luna?
Yeah.
How long ago was that? That was like so basically like two or three generations ago. Yeah. Like certainly there are people still alive, that were like alive and illiterate at that time, but they did the Communist Party did massive literacy campaigns, throughout the last 70 plus years, and obviously it's they have some of the best technical education in Asia and in the world. I mean, especially in Southeast Asia, that for sure. Like some of the big problems they have in places like Myanmar and Cambodia, and places that Luna and I have been, is that they don't have enough engineers and mechanics and just technicians, people who can just do like technical work. But Vietnam has just some of the best and most robust technical education programs in the world.
Yeah. Somehow we love fixing things. You live in Vietnam, so nearly every single corner of Vietnam would be some guys fixing something there. And my dad just like fix stuff at home.
Yeah. It's a big problem in other countries in Southeast Asia. Like I know that in Myanmar, I was there before all the problem, the problems that are happening right now. And actually, I was there when it was in the,
especially outside the sort of like tourist triangle. There's a real like gap in people's knowledge.
And one of the big problems is they have a lot of natural resources in Myanmar, but they just don't have the technical capacity to process it. So that's why a lot of that, like they have a lot of jade and they have a lot of other like, precious minerals and stuff. And they just don't have technicians to like work in factories and stuff. So they have to just export the raw materials out. And, if you've read Imperialism by Lenin, that like that's textbook imperialism, is whenever they're just like taking raw, so you have to have technical.
What is it? What is that name again? L-E. No,
which, by the way, I like to call him Vlad, but apparently, like, I've gotten so many comments from people saying that Vlad is not a nickname for Vladimir. So I know that now. So nobody has to comment that on this episode.
The tiresome left.
Everybody, please go to EJ's YouTube channel. comment about Vlad Revolt. So I wonder, since you mentioned that Vietnam is now years ahead on their goals, what are some of the goals that the Vietnamese government has in the sort of nearish future? What's the sort of purpose of it? What are you most excited about that the Vietnamese government is sort of planning for the people?
Funny you should ask, because it's the 14th Congress of the Communist Party of Vietnam is happening right now.
Right now, yeah.
At the time of recording. So by the time you guys hear this, it'll be a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, if you were in Vietnam right now, you would be bombarded with communist propaganda and sickle and hammer all over the street about that Congress.
Sounds like awful.
Like a Tuesday at my house.
Yeah, anyway, about the biggest goals in the nearest future of Vietnam, 2030 is a big year. We have a lot of goals for 2030s. For example, like the no substandard houses. We just freaking did it 4 years earlier, but anyway,
humble brag.
Yeah, right. Sorry, loser, USA. Anyway,
rub it in, jeez. Words hurt, Luna.
By 2030, we start doing it now already. By free education, free textbook, and free healthcare. But by 2030, Vietnam would have absolutely free education and free healthcare for every citizen, which is amazing. And also by 2030, Vietnam would also become like a middle high income kind of country. And toward the 1945 is the year actually before we set the goal of by 2050. But now we did so well that we cut back 5 years. Now the new year is like by 2045, Vietnam would be a high income country.
I'm sorry, I just have to mention this. I love, because if you go back through like the decades of literature coming out of the Communist Party of Vietnam, they're like so consistent with the way that they talk about like the income level of Vietnam. So like in the 80s, they were talking about, we're going to become a high, lower income country by the 90s. And then the 90s are like, we're going to become a lower middle income country by the 2000s. You know, it's
The
like they're
best part about socialist governments is that they are typically very honest with their projections. Materialist almost.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We are very much.
Shocking. If only there was a book that could teach people
Meanwhile,
how to do this.
our premiums are going way the fuck up in the United States, and insurance is basically unaffordable. And even if you have insurance, like, good luck getting taken care of without having to pay out the ass.
by design.
By design.
If you're really interested in this topic, by the way, of Vietnam's development planning and that sort of thing, there's an appendix in the back of the historical materialism book that Luna translated, and there's a really great primary source document from Vietnam talking about the different stages of development within the revolutionary, government that they've already been through and that they're going into.
Yeah, we have a clear map, of what step we're going to do.
And Vietnam just entered into the era of the rising nation. What was the last era called, Luna? It was the era of... It wasn't.
I'm drawing a
Actually,
blank.
I'll look in
my
the
brain
book while
right
Luna
now.
talks. Luna, you talk and I'll look in the book.
So another thing that I want to talk to you about is the difference between Vietnamese people and Westerners, especially USians, is this: Vietnamese, we do hold our politicians accountable. Means that we do keep track of what promises and plans and policies that they promise and what year they said they would do that. And if they don't do it or do it slower than they said, we would ridicule the heck out of them. We would shame them so much into disappearance.
I lived in Saigon in the years when the train was supposed to be started and it had not been started, and you would think that the government had lit the city on fire. People were so upset that like an enormous construction project was just delayed. Like, it exists now. Luna has a beautiful video about it.
And the government had to constantly do the press and apologize and explain why it's so late. So like,
and they had like experts come out, different engineers, different environmental experts to explain like, oh, here's the water table and this is why we can't put this here. And we didn't understand this because this changed, right? Like every single like week or couple weeks, there would have to be like a new
It's
update.
not like in the US where anytime there's any problem, you just blame the other bourgeois party. Like Republicans just blame Democrats. Like you never, it's just, I don't know. We could talk about that all day. Just the fact that you like self-crit in the USA is just like this completely alien concept that no one...
Anathema. It just doesn't exist.
I found the do you want to nerd out for a little bit? If anybody wants to read along at home, page 244,
get out your copies.
Appendix D. So this is the timeline of the historical development of the Socialist Republic.
We need like a video accompaniment where like there's a ball that bounces on the words as you're...
1920 to 1930 was the pre-revolutionary era when Ho Chi Minh discovered Marxism-Leninism. 1930 to 1975 was the era of independence, freedom, and building socialism, the founding of the Communist Party through the war and struggle to expel imperialist USA. 1975 to 2025 was... Okay, so this is the era of 1975 to 2025 is the era we just left, 50 years. The era of national reunification, renovation, and development, with the subsidizing period from 1975 to 1986, which by Luna has a great video on that hasn't had a lot of views. But if you want to learn more about modern Vietnam's history, watch the interview she did with her mom.
I watched that video. That's a very good video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a sleeper. It's underrated. Like a lot of people probably didn't watch it because they thought it was just going to be some like, I don't know, like because nobody wants to have a good time. So they probably just thought it was like a fun little interview with her mom.
It was sad because she talks. Anyway, that's the one where she talks about like experiences during the war and directly after the war. Yes, I watched that video.
Yes.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was very sobering, and it had a lot of really good like modern Vietnam history in it.
If Vietnam is so fantastic, can you tell me why it has an democracy index score of 2.62? It's actually gone down since 2006.
I can't believe it.
So
you want to take this one? Do you want to take?
Oh, I guess you guys
dang.
didn't Pokemon go to the polls.
Luna loves neoliberal indexes. There's nothing like. Wait. Can you do me a favor,
Yeah,
Justin?
right.
Is there a map? Is there a map
Oh, yeah,
involved?
of
They
course
always
there's a
have a
map,
map,
yep.
and it's always like red everywhere except for like Israel and USA and
Mhm,
Europe.
mhm.
Canada is more
The
democratic than
red
the
is for
United
communism.
States. Australia is more democratic than Canada.
Dang.
Oh, okay.
Chile is
Well, the
as
kangaroos get 2
democratic as the
votes
United
each, so
States of
that makes
America.
sense.
I would love to see the methodology where it's like we consulted a
Sure.
bunch of bourgeois academics and
Australia has the
journalists.
democracy sausage, so I think that's probably why they're ahead of Canada.
Oh, that's true.
Good point. Good point. And to be fair,
That's
Canada
true.
has Tony.
But check it,
so-
Sweden, Norway, 9.8. Ireland, 9.19. They can't even secede from the UK, but they've got a 9.19.
Luna has a video for everything. It's kind of like how Marx accounted for everything. Luna has a video on everything. Luna had an interview with the Communist Party of Ireland. You can go listen to that if you want to hear about Irish democracy right now. And then she also has a great video on the Pew Research on how they just completely fabricated the question translation. That was
Yeah. It's so freaking annoying. I mean, that is why, around maybe 10, 15 years ago, Vietnam would care about those human rights track, whatever they call it, democracy, freedom house, whatever. Mostly because of that the West would use that against us, whatever. But now, 2025, 2026, we really don't care.
But what I love is they're with this new Trump era, they're dismantling all of that entire propaganda machine. They're just taking it apart. Like the whole thing with the Nobel Prize, everyone's seeing now, it's like undeniable now that the Nobel Prize is just, I mean, we like, if you're like lucky enough to have advanced like class consciousness, which to me, I consider, I just lucked out to like have learned all this stuff, because I certainly didn't have this my whole life. I had like all the reactionary ideology until like just about a decade ago, just over a decade ago. But like most people are now seeing that the Nobel Prize is bullshit,
They
and
gave
it always
to
has
Kissinger,
been.
for fuck's
Oh,
sake.
Right.
And
the whole thing with Venezuela has just completely like exposed the bullshit about talking about international law or human rights, because if they want to, they're gonna fucking do it anyway. They don't care.
Yeah, and they don't care. Like no, they're not even like, the funny thing is they don't even pretend to care about human rights anymore. Like they're just outright saying we just want the oil. Like they're not even like the mask isn't even like it's like obliterated.
Although, they lift the mask and lower it, right? I mean, we can say this now, like at some watershed moment, but like the irony, right? The mask was also removed during the war of American and imperial aggression on Vietnam, right?
Yep.
Like it was also deeply unpopular for a very, very, very
for
long
sure.
time.
So actually, in a way, to tell you that actually, Trump and the USA did us a favor in showing their true face, because like before, Vietnamese like liberals or a political Vietnamese who don't know well about Donald Trump or the USA at all, they kind of trying to be neutral about Trump, in the USA, right? But right now, with all the shit that you just mentioned, anybody who has some kind of sanity in their mind, like what the heck, and the anti-US, anti-Trump right now, only the very small amount of fascists who outright support what Trump did. So it's like a really like a clear. They draw a clear line
That's an
now.
interesting statement, though. Do you guys? I mean, obviously you do, but are they outspoken? Are there outspoken fascists in Vietnam?
Oh
No.
yeah, there are, especially, I'm sorry, but the Viet
Well,
diaspora.
obviously, yeah, but I mean in Vietnam.
Obviously, yes. That like in Vietnam, there are about a few percent, like less than 5%. I say just like I guess around less than 5% of Vietnamese who are fascists.
Now I have to say this just because it needs to be said, and especially because like people will twist Luna's words here, but Luna has some excellent comrades in the Vietnam diaspora as well, and a lot of people, like, this is another like propaganda line. A lot of people who left Vietnam after the war and in the decades after the war, they left because of like economic, like what Luna says all the time is, and I think this is a great point, is because people are always like, oh, if socialism's so great, why did so many people leave? And it's like, well, more people left Iraq during the Iraq war and after. More people left Ukraine during and after, like during this period of war they're having right now. So it's like war and destruction and chaos and They literally bombed Vietnam into the Stone Age. So like not everyone who left because they were like fleeing communism by any stretch. A lot like
As well as within the last 10, 20 years, right, as Vietnam had, I think it was for 7 consecutive years, the largest growing middle class in the world, there has also been a new generation of Vietnamese people who left just because they had the economic possibility of doing so. And like, I can say this, I can speak from firsthand experience. I had a lot of friends, obviously they grew up, maybe they were interested in language, they learned English or French or Dutch or something like that, and wanted to go to one of those places. And actually, this is quite interesting because so many of my friends have since moved back to Vietnam, right? Like they moved abroad because they knew people in the diaspora. I don't just mean like Hollywood propaganda, although that's a part of it, but I mean, they had family members who frankly, like, it's a very contentious relationship. I'm obviously not the one to speak on it, but like people in the diaspora everywhere, they have to make peace with the fact that they left. They have to tell themselves a story that helps them make peace with their choices and move forward with their lives. And of course, most any Vietnamese person does have some family members in the diaspora. They do hear certain things. They do hear positive things. They also just hear things are different. And now the Vietnamese passport, I don't know that the passport itself is stronger, but it's a little bit easier to get visas. Vietnamese people are largely more educated. They have more discretionary income. They're able to travel. And so like a lot of people leave for that. But again, most of my friends who are, around our ages who would like to like, mostly it's, they want to have children and they're like, this place is a shithole. I'm going home.
Exactly.
And they realize that, the West is maybe not best. And there's a lot of things that they prefer about their home country. There are a lot of opportunities that are available in Vietnam.
Well,
that
even
are
a
not
lot
in
of the
West.
fascists who are like anti-communist, who are old now, are coming back to Vietnam to retire because
It's so funny. What a cognitive dissonance. It must be a cognitive dissonance for them. But like I am like personally, I feel very happy, because there are more and more Viet diaspora contacting me, the young generation like me, and start asking me questions about Vietnam. Like I mean, in good faith, and it's very heartwarming to see the young generation of Viet diaspora trying to learn the history of socialism and the resistance war to fight against the propaganda they've been fed their whole life. And and I start seeing a lot more young people. If they don't move back yet, they like you want to visit Vietnam and see the changes and see that all the information that they got from their older parents or grandparents are now wrong. Vietnam is very developed right now, very welcoming. So yeah, I'm happy to see the changes in the Viet diaspora community all over the world.
There are so many positive developments that are happening in Vietnam, but in so many ways, Vietnam is a bit of an outlier, right, in the region. And especially right now on the Thai-Cambodian border, there are some pretty serious regional tensions. And I was wondering if you guys would be willing to speak on what these tensions are and like how we can understand them, and also what impact, if any, they have had on Vietnam and the Vietnamese people.
So for a full explanation, you can go to my channel and watch
Literally
the 2
on
videos I
everything.
made about
Literally
it.
on
The
everything.
first one is about the
They're great.
historical kind of reason why, and the second one is the most update. But long story short, the tension between Thailand and Cambodia lasted for centuries already. Started from from the ancient time, the feudalist time, and then but the main reason was under the French colonialism time, where they did a bunch of intention division and divine like division of the border between the countries in Southeast Asia to cause tension, intentionally cause tension between countries to keep the region unstable. That is the point of French colonialism. Vietnam used to have border issues with Cambodia, Laos, and China due to that, but we deal with them. They're fine now. But the Thailand, Cambodia is like the worst long lasting consequence of that French colonialism time. And it's pretty freaking complicated. It's really freaking complicated. You need to do a lot of research and just go watch my video before commenting. But long story short, again, between Thailand and Cambodia, since the leaders of the two countries are very shitty, I'm sorry, they are very shitty. That is why this border tension become worse and worse every day. For example, if you watch my video, you would understand that this conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, I personally believe it was because of the shitty leaders of the two countries that caused this. None of those countries are innocent, but clearly Thailand is more aggressive. So my theory behind it, I did a lot of research. And my theory behind this is this. Thailand right now, there are three factions in Thailand that are trying to compete for power. The first one is a neoliberal faction that run by the Sinawat family. And the second faction is the royal family. And the third one, the most powerful one, is the military faction. Okay. So the royal family is the faction that is like, they mostly just behind the scene taking the money and play around, the king with his 20 or 22 concubines. So recently they are very much out of that power kind of conflict, but those are left to the neoliberal faction and the military been having a fight in the last 15 years, and they keep like winning and losing each other. And the military faction been using a lot of tactics to win over the neoliberal, and with this conflict, they are winning. They are winning because the prime minister of Thailand before, she was ousted because of the phone leak with the Cambodian prime minister. Oh my goodness. So that is the story in Thailand, that the military faction is benefiting from this conflict with Cambodia. In Cambodia, the story is pretty much different, but still similar in some way, is that the Hun family in Cambodia right now, they've been trying to consolidate the power. The Hun family in Cambodia is in controlling of both the government and the military. So they've been very powerful. Not like in Thailand, the military faction is fighting with against the neoliberal. In Cambodia, the Hun family been holding power of both the government and the military. But the economy of Cambodia in the last decade or two been getting worse and worse every day, with lots of problems from the scam centers, the casinos, illegal casinos, and gangsters and mafia. Meanwhile, the country's agriculture and the industry is getting worse every day. They don't have much of in the economic like power at all. So the
And these same families, right? In Cambodia, the Hun family is the same. Like, he was in the Khmer Rouge.
Yes, he used
this family has been around this dude has been around forever.
Exactly. He was the one of the leader of a small platoon or something, not platoon, a army group of Khmer Rouge in the 70s. And then, when Vietnam was putting an end to this genocidal regime.
I just mean, it's yet another one of these like sort of, I guess it wasn't technically a forever war, but it was like an ongoing conflict where at the end of it, like somehow the same people still ended up in charge.
Yes, exactly. So it was the same family, the same guy. He's very corrupt. The whole family is very corrupt. And I spent a few years living in Cambodia, so I can say that I understand really well the economy of Cambodia and the infrastructure. They virtually don't have any good infrastructure because the streets, the roads, and the hospitals are very poorly built. What they have is like big, massive buildings built by corporations. Very freaking capitalist. So if you go to Cambodia, imagine this, like really small broken cement road, crowded like traffic around there, but right on it is massive casino building with all the lights and the expensive cars of super rich people go there for gambling. So the gap between the rich and the poor is very horrible, especially with the rising of the mafia and the illegal scam centers and casinos getting worse and worse every day. So the social disruption, the social outcry in Cambodia is getting worse and worse over a decade. That was why, the Hun family was also scared of having, a domestic kind of, disruption, riot or anything that could happen. So
there was also that opposition, right? Like the nationalists that were like super
and also at the same time, the opposition party against the Hun Sen was very Khmer Rouge nationalist faction. The guy called Sam Rainsy. He's super fascist.
Mhm,
The computer is
mhm.
trying to bring back. He's like, calling people to riot against the Hun family. So it's like a lot of tension inside Cambodia. That was why Hun family, the Hun Sen guy with the leader is Hun Sen, he needs something to distract people, Cambodian people, from that internal kind of conflict like that. And look at all around, Thailand is the best choice, because at the same time the military also needs something to distract people, to unite the country against the neoliberal faction, so they have the power in Cambodia. The Hun family need also distraction for people to focus on something else, an outsider enemy, so that is why they in it. I think that they in it together. I could be wrong, but I think they in it together when the conflict started from May 2025, because at that time when the neoliberal Prime Minister of Thailand visited Hun Sen in Cambodia, and after that they had a phone call talking about the politics problem situation in the country, and Hun Sen, the leader of Cambodia, intentionally leaked the phone call with Thailand Prime Minister. When in that phone call, she badmouthed some other politicians of Thailand. And because of that phone call, she was ousted by the government because it caused a lot of social outcry of people. Tens of thousands of Thailand protested in Thailand to kick her out of the government because she a shame to the government of Thailand. So Hun Sen was definitely in this kind of scheme. So that was why, because of that the phone call leak, she was ousted. So the military took the power, and the Hun family, suddenly there's a border conflict. In that border, the Brevi here temple kind of thing. So everything that happened like that. So yeah, that was why I believe that both the leaders, I'm not saying the people, of course the people don't want war and disruption like this, but the leaders of the two countries.
No, and a ton of people have been displaced as well. So it has a significantly negative impact on this. Certainly it's not for them, right? Yeah, it's certainly not for their best interests, but clearly the wealthy elites of both countries can find a way to benefit from it.
Kind of tie this in with the books that Luna has translated, like the historical materialist analysis of this situation would be, obviously the ruling classes of both Thailand and Cambodia are capitalist, right? And now there is like this remnant feudal class with the monarchies that are still there, but the real power in both countries is obviously capitalist. And the Hun family owns
over 100
over 100
companies.
companies. They're super wealthy. They're tied in with like all the scam center millionaires. The what's the guy's name that ran the Prince?
The Chen Chi guy is the real gangster,
Right, who just
there.
got extradited to China. But anyway, so they want to secure, that wealth that they have. And both Cambodia and Thailand have, big wealth gaps as well. Cambodia visibly is worse than Thailand, but they both have those kinds of issues. And they're both having the whole world is coming into this period of like instability, right? And you're having like these quote unquote Gen Z protests all around the world and everything. They're looking at every place else where they're having this kind of instability, and they want to stave it off. So it's like an old trick in the book. It goes back thousands of years. When you start to worry about internal division and internal opposition to your regime, you create an external threat. Yeah, and they're doing it's the same thing we're going through in the USA with all the xenophobia and all the anti-China rhetoric, the situation with Venezuela. That's basically, they're doing their own version of that, where both the ruling class, the capitalist ruling class of both countries, are benefiting by just casting blame for all the social problems they're having on the external problems. So if there's any kind of problem in Cambodia now, the Hun family can say, oh, that's because of Thailand, and vice versa. If there's any problems in Thailand, they can blame it on Cambodia. So it's a really perfect scapegoat. And unfortunately, a lot of nationalists in the working class fall for this kind of thing. And of course, we see that in the USA as well.
Very
Right.
sad, very depressing to see that. And about Vietnam, we Vietnamese, we don't want this conflict to happen. Of course, we don't at all. Oh my goodness.
Nobody wants it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
because here's the thing to think about it. If there's a full-on war between Thailand and Cambodia, there would be a big wave of people who trying to run away from that war. And which country that they would choose? Obviously, Vietnam they would choose the most because at least we right next to Cambodia, so it's kind of very fast for them to.
It's really bad for the economy when it's like, there's a war right next door. It's bad for like pretty much everybody except for the ruling classes of Cambodia and Thailand who are just trying to hold on to their power.
Over 1 million people had to move from their hometown in both Cambodia and Thailand. So it's really, really upsetting to see that, and we don't want this to become a full-on war at all.
So as we sort of I don't know, reflect on this divisiveness, obviously in this case, we are mostly talking about an international conflict, although broadly regional. Like as we said before, a lot of the divisions of these countries, quote unquote, are drawn by imperial powers. And of course, people have family, literal family members, right? As well as just freedom of travel and experiences in the region. And so nobody, as you said, wanted this to happen. One of the things that one of the things I love most about the thing that I love most, which is Vietnam, is the way that the Vietnamese people made unity, made resistance. This is something, I apologize for repeating myself. I know I've mentioned it on another episode, but we now in the modern day see the Vietnamese, capital T, capital V, as real fucking ass kickers. And I think it's very easy to imagine that the Vietnamese people have always been this sort of unified, monolithic cultural force of a people. And historically, this is just not true, right? Throughout history, you have had several different dynasties, several different communities and identities that are regional to the point, right? I've mentioned before, I study, Southern Vietnamese in Hanoi. I'm completely unintelligible, right? There are still cultural and linguistic and all of these kinds of differences between the people. And yet the Vietnamese people found a way to find unity, to create resistance, and to define a sort of healthy and truly anti-imperialist nationalism. It is some of the most powerful that we've seen, really, certainly in living memory, if not ever in the history of humanity. And so I was wondering, what do you guys think that Vietnam can teach us about this kind of unity and national identity and resistance?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about how actually it's not true that Vietnam is monolith kind of thing. Just so Vietnam, we have 54 ethnicities with 54 different languages and 54 different cultures. The thing that we did was, I think Vietnam is pretty unique in this kind of sense because yes, we've been through a lot of dynasties and different kind of colonialism, imperialism, a lot of wars together. And I think that Ho Chi Minh is the big, we can learn a lot from Ho Chi Minh right now. Add more. Besides having many different ethnicities with many different languages and cultures, we also have a different classes of people from the feudalism time too. We have the landlord class, we have the noble class, we have the royal people, and we have the poor farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And then when French colonialism come, we also have the working class. So it's super complicated and fractured kind of society like that. But Ho Chi Minh was the one who really united us. And long story short, the way that he did was this. He went and meet those people in person. And he tried to find the common ground between us. So under the French colonialism time, he found the common ground that we were all oppressed by colonialism. It doesn't matter you are the rich landlord or you are ethnic minority, poor farmer, we are all oppressed in different ways, but we are all oppressed by the colonialism. And he gave us a glance into the new society under socialism and communism where everybody is included. Everybody is equal and have our share in the society. So because of that kind of vision and because of first he made us understand the real oppression that we're facing right now. Instead of fighting each other over the small crumbs of colonialism that left for us, he pointed out the big picture. Who is the real enemy during this time right now? And he gave us a solution for the future. Fight together, we will have a better future under socialism and communism. So that is what he taught us. And at the same time, we unite, Vietnamese people can unite each other is because we are very inclusive, which means that we put aside all the differences of the languages, of the cultures, of the classes we are in. We all living in this area. We all Vietnamese. We all under the oppression by imperialism and colonialism. And our true path is socialism, communism, where everybody is equal and have a share in society to build the same society. So that is the thing that I think the Westerners, you are lacking the most, is you are fighting over, we call in the book we call like the superstructure conflict in the mindset of race, of different language and cultures, and skin color and all. Like, no, you can't focus on that at all. You can't, because we all humanity, we all the working class, and our biggest enemy right now is capitalism. So you need to understand class consciousness. You need to understand the historical mission of the working class, which is to end capitalism and bring, liberation to the whole humanity. You have to understand yourself, understand who's your biggest enemy, and you have to be inclusive. You have to welcome everyone who want to fight with you. Welcome with your whole heart. That is only then you can unite together in a united front to fight against your enemy. So yeah, I think that is what Vietnam been trying. That is why Vietnamese government right now, let me tell you how a government exists after unification like that. The government of Vietnam right now, first of all, it is non-religious. It is to make sure that all religions are treated the same, and we are not in favor of any religion. That is why it is very strange to me to see the White House spokesperson or the United States president in any of his speech, they just say, "Oh, God bless America," or something, like holding a Bible. Like, no, it's not like that in Vietnam. The government of Vietnam must be non-religious to make sure that we are equal to any other religion. So we are inclusive of all other religions. You're welcome, as long as
And just so anybody knows, you can go to Vietnam, you can go to a beautiful Catholic cathedral, you can go to a mosque, you can go to a Hindu temple, you can go to a Cao Dai temple, you can go to a Buddhist temple, and all of these places are beautiful. They're treated with respect. You can do none of these things. You can do ancestor worship. You can just believe in astrology.
Yeah.
And all of those things are treated with respect and dignity and curiosity and open-mindedness. At least in my own, firsthand experience.
Cult that like abuses children and stuff. Those do get clamped down on, unlike in the U.S. But you'll see. Like there's this. I don't know. That was a subtweet that I probably should elaborate on. But like, yeah, there was this like really vicious, like destructive cult in Vietnam. But then when the government like cracked down on that and like actually like took the child abusers, and held them accountable, there was like outcry on the Anglosphere Western media about like religious persecution, and it was just so disgusting because it did have like Epstein vibes.
So another thing the government Vietnam doing is this: not like the USA, we officially recognize all of our ethnicities, and they are well protected. We encourage and we give fund to ethnic minorities group to keep their language, teach their language, and practice their culture and tradition. It's welcome in Vietnam. We have festivals nearly like every year everywhere in Vietnam to welcome and try to enhance and uphold those traditional culture of different ethnicities. So like we're very inclusive like that. That is why when I learned that in the USA, not any ethnic cities or cultures and languages are officially recognized, I was pretty shocked. I was naive at that time, but because I grew up in the Vietnamese way, everybody is welcome and inclusive in this society. So I was really shocked when I found out that the USA just doesn't do the same thing, and that is why a lot of people just not feel included in society. They feel alienation. That is why it's very difficult for you people to unite, because it's too much.
Because it is a culture of alienation versus, as you've said, Luna, a culture of inclusivity and welcoming, which like is very, very, really true.
And I think that, one thing that we like to push back on, Luna wrote a great article, I guess it was almost 5 or 6 years ago now, but it was about how, like, I think it was called like why Marxists should care about like land back and LGBTQ plus movement. Something I could send you all a link if you want to put in the show notes or something. But anyway, we are explicitly not class reductionists, right? Like, because class reductionists, they make the claim that talking about things like race or being concerned with things like race or, trans rights or whatever is a distraction. But what, and of course there's like a kernel of truth in the fact that
the liberal identitarian capture of these things does become a distraction. But the fact that you face racial or sex discrimination or discrimination against your ability or your ethnicity or whatever, like, is very real and is not a distraction. It is part of the co-arising.
Yeah, it's determined by capitalism.
Exactly.
Like these things, like, like there was bigotry and prejudice before capitalism, but if you study historical materialism, you'll know that in every era of human development and every stage of human development, the different social superstructural phenomena that arise, they arise based on and determined by the economic base. So like under feudalism, we had feudal forms of bigotry and superstructural oppression. Under capitalism, all of these things are determined by capitalism. So that is, so instead of saying like class reductionism, I don't even know if maybe there's already a term for this, but we would offer that we should try to be like class determinists, like that we believe that class determines all of these other problems, and that class is the primary contradiction that we all, like as Luna was saying, that we all share. Like the capitalist class is the common enemy of everybody, and they exacerbate and foment and develop these forms of prejudice and oppression intentionally to keep us at each other's throats instead of uniting against the common class enemy of the capitalists. So,
and the overcoming of this primary contradiction certainly doesn't eliminate everybody's, to use the language that Lenin or Stalin would have used, backwardness, their social backwardness. However, it creates the material conditions that give us the best opportunity of people having the possibility to raise their consciousness to overcome said backwardness.
And I would even, I don't know if I've ever even talked to you about this, Luna, before. This is something I've been thinking about lately. But, I think that we should consider things like when we're talking about trans rights and all this kind of stuff, I almost like want to just consider this an internal problem of the working class. Like we don't need to involve the bourgeois structure, it's none of their business, like how we want to build our class struggle. You know what I mean? And so I don't want transphobic rhetoric in my Communist Party. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that that's, for me as a non-binary person, I'm allowed to like struggle for my own social liberation within the class struggle. And I think that's fine, as long as I also recognize that, things like transphobia and gender oppression, that sort of thing, are determined by capitalism. And I don't allow that to get in the way of, the class struggle. It's like, it's basically just, I feel like we could cut through a lot of the bullshit if we just understand that the ruling class wants us to hate each other because of our race, because of our gender, because of our identity, that sort of thing. It's very much in their interest.
Because of anything they can glom onto.
And that cuts through so much bullshit when if you can wrap your head around that, which is a pretty simple concept, if you can wrap your head around that, then it makes it a lot simpler to understand how we should move and operate as communists. We just don't allow those things to divide us. You just don't allow prejudice based on these superstructural social issues to poison your mind and keep you from having solidarity with a fellow worker. And even if your fellow, and this is where it gets really kind of difficult. And even for me personally, it's very difficult. Like I've worked at jobs where I have a coworker who is.
You've worked at jobs?
Yeah, believe it or not, people who
I try not to myself.
People who go on podcasts, some occasionally have had jobs. No, but yeah, I mean, I've worked with people who are very reactionary, and if you're trying to form a union and you have coworkers, I'm from South Carolina, like you're going to have coworkers that are going to be bigots and they're going to say really out of pocket shit. But you still, at the end of the day, have to, form unions and build class consciousness and be able to talk to these people.
And realize that people's opinions and their words, even if they're incredibly hateful, and as I said before, sort of to use that kind of antiquated language of backwardness, even if they are those things, those people's words, their thoughts, their actions, their behaviors are nothing. That violence is nothing compared to the structural violence that we all face frankly. It's difficult in the moment, but it's true.
That's why I think it was such a big deal in the early Soviet Union for them to like get together and just like hash it out, right? Rather than creating division within the political system, right? And what we have done by hyper focusing on ideology, like personal ideology within the political movement, is that we've allowed them to keep us from uniting on the basis of class and anti-capitalism. And so, because we'll be like, oh, you said this and such, or you think this and such, therefore you can't be a communist, or you think this and such, and I disagree with that, so therefore you can't be a communist, or we're going to yell at you when you show up or whatever. And these are all things that can be taken care of, like you said, behind closed doors or whatever, or in front of the party, behind, within the structure itself, instead of having this weird social, like, I don't want to say Puritanism because that's a thing already, but like purity obsession where everybody has to be ideologically perfect in order to participate in like communist action.
The problem too is when we have these like okay, and I think there's a really good development that has happened recently, which is that like the internet has basically exploded. So like we don't really have like it used to be everyone was on Twitter and everyone was on Facebook and everything was just like a free for all where everyone was like participating. And I think that was actually, that had a lot, there were a lot of benefits to that, but there were also a lot of drawbacks. And one of those things is that, Nazis were like sitting at the table all the time. And people that, are just like completely opposed to everything. And that's one of the reasons why we can't, and this is such an unfortunately controversial statement to make in the US, but we can't rely on these bourgeois parties to enact class struggle because you're letting the capitalists and the fascists, sit at the table with you and have input and like throw billions of dollars into the equation to influence the situation. That's why we have to have worker controlled parties, controlled institutions that use working class conscious ideology as a program. Because if you're tweeting something out on Twitter, you're saying like, hey, I think that racism is bad, and then like everyone and their bots and their sock puppets can all jump in and then they have that debate bro mentality that like, oh, you have to like win in the free market of ideas or whatever. Like you're basically just allowing the enemy to have a seat steering the ship,
dictate the terms of the topic.
It's to me, when I look back at myself, like maybe, I don't know, even just like 5 or 6 years ago, when I sort of had some of those tendencies where it was just like, oh, we have to, what was there's this like thought terminating cliche of basically like it's related to free speech and all this shit where it's just like, oh, you have to like, you can't be in an echo chamber, you know what I mean? And it's like there is again an element of truth to that. Like you don't want to just be like, you don't want to be so closed off that you're not a mass movement anymore, right? We want to try to build a mass movement, but that doesn't mean we let fascists come in and just like have a role in the steering committee. Right. Or even neoliberals or even just anti-communists,
Bro, they've revealed themselves. They're all fascist now. That's all just like it's liberatory or it's liberal. Those are the two options. That's it.
Yeah, I think that it's very poignant for that you bring it up because we are talking about it behind our closed doors in this new era that we just moved into. We can't do that anymore. Like we can't divide ourselves like that anymore. Like we need to set up a program that we do not deviate from. And then everything outside of that is dealt with internally within like your local chapters and, whatever, if needed.
Well, and I think like circling back to what EJ said about the internet being sort of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. I think that for a while, people saw the ease with which you could organize online and believed that was a substitute for organizing in real life, and it is not. You cannot, period, organize on the internet. It is not a place for organization. It's a place for education. It's a place for communication, to be like, come to my local meeting. That's fine. But do not attempt to organize online because for all the reasons that you mentioned, because fascists can infiltrate liberals, cops, anybody, the FBI, the CIA, all of them have access to the internet. And so they can get in your shit. And they can do that in real life. Like we were part of an organization that got infiltrated by undercover cops.
It was Proles. Tony was an undercover cop, and that's why he's not at this episode recording.
Yeah, Tony, that's why he's not
Purged.
here. But
Fully
like
kept his Zencaster
like it's much
credentials.
easier to catch these motherfuckers. It's much easier to catch these people in real life than it is on the internet, where they are anonymous, effectively anonymous, and they can say all the right words and like whatever. And also, but you need to be like willing to socially determine people who are unhelpful to the movement. It's not something that you should like individually be like, I don't like that person and I'm going to bully them till they're out of the organization. But if you talk to other members of the org and you're like, look, this person is causing nothing but trouble for us. I don't know if they're a cop, but they are behaving in a manner which is unhelpful to the organization. And I think we need to excise them, or at least like limit their interaction with your organization.
It also like depends on the org, you know, like, cause like some orgs are going to have to so for instance, we've done a few interviews with this organization called Fight Toxic Prisons. And what they do is they go around the whole country and they shut down prisons that are being constructed. And they say that like, you know, these people are like hardcore. Most of them are like anarchists, like super anti-cop people or whatever. And they, you know, but even they'll say like, you know, when you're trying to get a supermax prison shut down, they're trying to build one in like in a small town or something like that. You have to go and you have to talk to like the small business owners. You have to talk to the landowners. You have to talk to even the local police who are going to have to deal with like all these, you know, protests and that kind of stuff. So like they're saying you have to like work across lines sometimes. But what I think is important to come back to your point, Jeremy, is you have to know the difference between internal lines and external lines. And you have to know, like, sometimes you might have to deal with people who are more reactionary tactically to have like tactical unity with them, but you have to know the difference between that and like your internal cohesion and your internal discipline.
Right. What I mean is not necessarily like, I don't work with people who are different from you. What I mean is if there is a person who is very clearly wrecking your organization intentionally or not, that is what I mean. Like, I don't mean like, because I think we talked about this quite a lot in the last 3 or 4 days, but the time to like attack people from other tendencies, people who are not like exactly like you, is over. We are very close to the point where they're going to start killing us. And so we need to have a united front.
Tactical
we will
unity.
need to work with liberals on this one, unfortunately, because
well said,
tactical unity. I mean, this is we are approaching the Spanish Civil War, and we cannot behave the way that those orgs did during the 100%. Spanish Civil War. We need to be able to come together. However, again, cops will infiltrate you, and there will be people who behave exactly like cops, even if they're not. And those people need to be excised from the group, and it doesn't matter.
They're equally dangerous, regardless of their intention.
Correct. It does not matter what their professed ideology is. If they claim to be a Marxist-Leninist, but all they want to do is argue about the definition of the working class forever.
Will there be restaurants under communism?
Like, you're not helping us. Yes. You know,
divisive.
DoorDash.
With friends like these, who needs COINTELPRO?
Go read some of the CIA and the, you know, what did they call it before, the OSA or whatever, like back in World War II. They've put out manuals. OSS. They put out manuals on how to disrupt organizations, how to just like waste time with bickering and talking about unimportant, mundane details, that sort of thing.
We've talked multiple times about the experience that we had at the founding of Marxist Center in 2009. 19 anyway, 18. And how it was like, it was just that CIA manual, but with like 15 different people. They all wanted to argue about what the definition of a word was. They weren't sure whether they should include socialism in their like founding charter because it might alienate people. I mean, it was the most insane thing I've ever experienced.
Well, Vietnam put socialism in our name, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. I guess we like alienate the rest of the world.
I think it's really important to mention now too. One of the most important things that I've learned from studying dialectical materialism and from, you know, learning from Vietnamese people, Vietnamese communists, is that we don't have to spend all of our time arguing about shit like that, because the way you discover truth is not through arguing, but through practice. So if there's a question of like, okay, will the word socialism alienate people, right? There's simple ways to do this. Like, you know, for instance, if it's 15 people, you know, take a little vote. If like 7 of the, if you know, I can't even do simple math right now. It is very early for me. What would be the majority of that? 8. If 8 people, I was so close. If 8 people want to put socialism in the title, then you do it, and then you like wait a few months and see if it's actually alienating people. And then if it's, like, find out through practice. We don't have to, you can't build a perfect system in your head and then implement it. That's utopianism. That's the opposite of Marxism.
Democratic essentialism. Just freaking vote, man. Where's your democracy?
Yeah.
I think also, sorry, I know what's happening. I love what we're doing here, you guys, but I invited you to my episode about my favorite topic, Vietnam. I wanted to ask Luna and EJ if you guys also agree with this. Again, this could just be my perception, but Luna, when you were listing like how did Vietnam do this, very clearly in a socialist country, it is a worker state, and the people, the masses, feel like, and they have to be empowered to feel like they have more say in the goings on of their government. And one of the things that I observed when I was living in Vietnam is the way that, as we were saying before, like we just like harass politicians until they do the things that they say that they're going to do. But it's also like local people feel very deeply connected specifically to their local politicians. Like I remember when I lived in Saigon, I kept seeing this like billboard, this advertisement of this guy. And it was my first year in Vietnam. And I was like, oh, is that like the president? And my roommate was like, what the fuck? No. And it was like, I don't know, like a local politician or something. And it never occurred to me that why these people would be talking about this. Whereas like there are a lot of, for example, US citizens who like Pokemon goes to the polls every 4 years and know who the president is, but like maybe they don't know their governor, their senator, their mayor. They don't know any of their local politicians.
I wish I didn't know my governor.
They don't know any of their local politicians. They have no idea what, if anything, is decided at the like municipal or state level. And that's another difference that I observed is that part of the way that you get sweat equity in your own government is through feeling like actual people who are your representatives, who are representing you and who answer to you because you know them and you know who they are.
Yes.
And that's another thing that like I observed about a really significant difference between the way that government seems to work in Vietnam compared to, my experiences in the West.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. And yes, it is true that we do know the local leaders. So I will be easily like, it's just our neighbor, man. We just like our parents just know them since they were young and they would like been friends with each other. So we know. So
that does not sound like a 2.5 democracy index. Okay.
Exactly.
And the reason that I structured the episode the way that I did, where we started talking about the sort of wins and the focus of the Vietnamese government, is because I want our listeners to have their I think it's Marseille. I think it's like their Marseille moment. One of my other favorite stories about Ho Chi Minh was when he is traveling on a boat and he arrives in the port city of Marseille. And of course, the French colonists, I know you know, but maybe our listeners don't. Of course, the French colonists have been relatively privileged people at this time, and they're wealthy and they're well-dressed, and maybe they speak multiple languages and they're quite affluent and they love to present and perform their affluence. And so Ho Chi Minh is expecting that people in France will look like this. And he arrives at this port city in Marseille. And I guess Marseille's quite cute now, but at the time it reeked like fish. It had really horrible infrastructure. It stank. It was ugly. It was cloudy. The food was terrible. And he sort of arrives here and he looks around at these French people and he was like, you guys all have the audacity to colonize my country, to call us savage, to tell us that like we don't know what we're like, get the fuck out of here. And this was like a part of his, I mean, it was already in process, but this was a big part of his own radicalization process.
Eye-opening,
was realizing and beginning to see exactly through the myth of empire that West is best. And so maybe you all, our listeners, have not had the opportunity to get on a boat and cook on a boat and go to different countries, or maybe that's not a possibility for you. But like, use this. You're hearing about the way that people live in other parts of the world. You don't have to start from scratch and creatively reimagine another possibility. It already exists. It's already functioning. And this can help you in your own radicalization process, because one of the things that helps us overcome, as you said, Luna, like not fighting over the crumbs, right, is realizing there's whole meals.
Yep.
There's whole meals out there.
Yeah.
And when you realize how much better it can be, and it already is for some people some of the time, you realize that like, I don't have to fight you for this, because together we can both demand something better.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
But of course, there are some of us, two among us right now, who do not live in the country that we were born. And EJ, I invite you to help me launder my my foreigner guilt, my model minority guilt, to talk about what you feel like it means to be a foreigner, what our place is, if you ever feel a type of way about sort of being on the outside and inviting agitation or whatever it is. And like, how do you like responsibly hold your foreignness? Yes, I'm laundering my own guilt, but hey, we might have some listeners who also live abroad.
So first of all, I have to be very clear about this. I'm not an expat, because I am a permanent. No, I'm not talking.
I said foreigner.
I'm not talking to you, Ray. I'm just saying. I hate the word expat, first of all, because it typically just means like it's like a word that you use for like.
Shit, let's fight it out. I think we have to keep using it. I think it's like, obviously the word points to something that is colonial, but it also describes somebody's experience. And I think it is like liberal brainwashing to be like, I am an immigrant. Let's all call ourselves immigrants, because it doesn't materially improve anyone else's material conditions.
You're right, but right? I mean, there were definitions to these words originally, and they used to mean something different, which was an expat was somebody who like temporarily lives outside their home country with the full intention of going back, right? Like I've moved here, I have a family here, not just Luna, but her family has like definitely welcomed me into the family, like her parents, her cousins, her village, which in Vietnam is like an extended part of the family, right?
We call our villagers, brothers and sisters too, like the same big family.
I hope to die here, like I hope that this is like my home forever, because and so that to me
we'll bury you there anyway, right?
But yeah, it comes with responsibility, especially coming from the USA, which continues to try to my country that I'm a citizen of continues to try to destabilize and attack Vietnam covertly and overtly all the time. And so I think it comes with some responsibility, and it's a much different dynamic than like people moving from imperialized countries to the imperial core, right? Like there's a different relationship that's got to be recognized. But I think that what I'd like to focus on in trying to answer this question is the way that Vietnamese people have taught me so much about internationalism. And for all the talk about Vietnamese nationalism and the way, and of course, Western historians and Western sociologists like to over-index on the word nationalism when they talk about Vietnam and Ho Chi Minh and that sort of thing. But Vietnamese, like quote unquote nationalism, is 100% dialectically entangled with internationalism. Like neither means anything without the other. And you can't understand the Vietnamese nation, which only, and they'll tell you like they only exist because they had to wrench their freedom and their self-determination from being colonized, right? And there's a great quote, I think, was it Fidel Castro, Luna, who said, as soon as we achieve like communism globally, the Cuban people will be very happy to fold up the Cuban flag and put it in a museum forever. Like that the only reason that a colonized nation has what, it's unfortunate that we use the same word nationalism to talk about like what Vietnamese and Cuban people are trying to do. And we use that same word to talk about what Donald Trump is doing, because they're not the same thing at all. They're completely different. It's like they're homonyms. Okay. So Vietnamese nationalism is just the fact that they want to be self-determined. They don't want to be colonized. That's what that means. And it's totally, completely wrapped up in internationalism. And, there's so much evidence of that. Part of it is the extreme solidarity that Vietnam has with Cuba and Laos. I mean, it's like so this word has kind of lost all of its meaning, but it's legitimately touching to me to see the bonds of like fraternal unity that exists between Vietnamese and Laotians and Vietnamese and Cubans. They help each other materially all the time. Nothing proved this more than going through COVID. And it also, COVID taught me about Vietnamese internationalism as well in the way that I was treated all through COVID. Because, we lived in this neighborhood in Da Nang, and Luna's, every neighborhood in Vietnam basically has like a group chat, like that's kind of like one of the social structures. And all through COVID, all through the lockdowns and everything, these people who, I maybe had one or two conversations with, or maybe none at all, they were like concerned about me. And they were asking like, your husband must be really sad because he can't see his family right now. And they kept giving me beef because I'm from the USA. And so like the stereotype is that Americans love beef, which
beef was rare.
Beef was rare at the
Beef was rare during that COVID time.
I can't deny it. I do love beef.
You do love beef.
So
not reading the allegations.
So like, yeah, they would just be like dropping it. They'd be like, oh, we just left some beef outside your door for your husband so he can have like, a steak or whatever. And, but like that like they didn't, and a lot of these people literally were old enough, to have been victims of the war, like they knew that I was from the USA. I've never once, people ask me all the time, does anybody have any resentment or anything towards you for being an American? I've been in the USA. I've been in Vietnam since 2013. Okay. So about 13 years now. And not a single time has anybody ever shown any resentment towards me about the war. It's the opposite because I don't speak Vietnamese very well. I'm trying to learn it and everything. But if I just show the slightest amount of effort to try to speak Vietnamese to like a shop owner or to like a lady selling banh mi or whatever, they're so appreciative, like they're so happy and they want us to be like, included, and so all I can tell you is Vietnam has taught me what internationalism truly is. They want people to come visit. The way I look at it is, as long as people are coming here and they're being respectful and they're not trying to like look down on Vietnamese people and stuff. I've never heard of it. I've had people come. We've had friends visit from Africa, from South America, Brazil and Venezuela and all over the place. And Iran, we just met an Iranian comrade yesterday, and everybody says the same thing, which is that they feel so welcome in Vietnam. It's such a, and that makes me feel really shitty about like the experience Luna had coming to visit the USA with me, and the way that, she was experiencing racism.
If I go to the USA and if I don't speak perfect English, that's the problem.
Yeah, it is god fucking awful.
Yeah, because it's a shocking difference. Because if I speak like 3 words of Vietnamese, in like, with a terrible accent, they're so like encouraging, and they're like, "That's so great that you're trying to learn Vietnamese," And meanwhile, Luna goes to.
Absolutely. It is only like this past year that my Spanish has like leveled out with my Vietnamese. And obviously Spanish is like a much easier language for an English speaker to learn. But the reason that my Vietnamese improved as quickly as it did was that like Vietnamese people were absolutely fucking thrilled to hear me sound like the stupidest baby that has ever walked the planet. And they were like, right. So proud of me. And versus when I arrived in Latin America, the sentiment was sort of like, well, why don't you already speak Spanish? And I was like, it's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, like Luna went to the USA, and it's like, she speaks, she can write English better than I can, first of all. Like, she's like a brilliant writer. And then she speaks English, like, I would say very much at like a college plus level. She has an accent, and everybody, judged her. And in South Carolina, people like say things outright about her English, and
that was wild to bring her to South Carolina, honestly.
I mean, I do feel bad because the one time she got to visit the USA, and it's basically like closed off forever, but the one time she got to visit, I took her to the Southeast, and it's probably not the most
they didn't send their best. You're trying to allude to here.
There's some good comrades in the South. There's also a lot of really, really shitty fascists in the South.
Reactionaries, lots of them.
On behalf of everyone In Nukmi, Luna. Xin lỗi. I'm so sorry.
Should I tell this story? I don't know. You can edit it out,
Yes.
but this true story.
Tell
When I was in South
Drag
Carolina,
him. Drag him.
I was in South Carolina. So it was like somewhere. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but like a person, an old person, I think, start talking to me, and they asked me because they assume me from I was like, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Vietnam." So I guess they assume me to be from the anti-communist Vietnam side. So they asked me like, "Okay, did your family fight, in the war?" I said like, "Yes, because my grandpa did fight in the war." And then said, "Okay," and then he asked me about what kind of army, kind of group or team that my grandpa fought for.
They asked her, did your grandpa fight with an American, unit?
Unit, yeah. What unit? What American unit did my grandpa fought with? It was like, no, my grandpa was killed by the Americans. So
The guy's face just he in no universe could he
Awkward.
imagine that her grandpa was a communist, and he just had no clue. Like he was totally painted
Yeah.
into a corner. It was so funny. But Luna, the way she said it was so matter of fact. She's like, no, the Americans killed my grandpa. He didn't fight with them; they killed him.
So yeah, it's a matter of fact. It is a fact. I just stated a fact. I didn't have, to be honest with you, I don't feel any bad feeling or sorry or anything because we won. So, duh.
Hell yeah, you did. Against the French, against the Americans, against the Cambodians, and also, everybody loves to forget, against the Chinese. Ass kickers.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So just to tie up the point I was trying to make, it's just that we have to be internationalists and we have to be cognizant of the the role of imperialism and of course the privileges that we have, but we also have to appreciate the fact that we are all a global working class, and it is the workers of the world that need to unite and just kind of exist through the contradictions. And if you do come to Vietnam, I think you would be very welcome to come if you want to just come here as like a tourist or whatever. But come here to learn from the Vietnamese people. Don't come here thinking that you're going to like teach them, because I think I did have sort of that shitty attitude when I first came here. That like I had a better perspective or whatever. But I was kind of beaten into humility, especially through COVID, into realizing that I have a lot more to learn from the Vietnamese people than I have to teach them. So.
Mm.
Yeah, I had a job. I did archaeology for a while. I also had a job. I still have a job, and it required me to fly a lot, and so I got like a miles credit card, so I could like buy my flights and then have the like archaeology
Jeremy has credit.
company. I have credit.
You
I could have the
boozy?
archaeology
You
company
boozy?
like is having a credit card bourgeois. So
Debt, the new bourgeoisie.
But this at the beginning of this year, the like miles credit card people were like, hey, use your miles. You should use your miles. Here are some options. And it was like you could fly to Ho Chi Minh City from Denver with your miles and only pay $40. And I was like, oh my God. So that might be a thing next year.
That means go to the airport.
Yeah.
Well, and then also maybe political asylum.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There you go. That might be my reason for going.
This is my plan. I'm not joking. This is my retirement plan. The Vietnamese government is going to see me for the propaganda arm I am.
I will say, if you're in the USA right now and you don't have a passport, you need to get one just as a backup plan at least. But you know that in the last, I just looked at this because I have a comrade in the UK who was asking about something, I don't know. Anyway, and so I was looking at the statistics for like how many Americans own passports. But in the last like 8 years, well, basically through COVID, the number of Americans with passports has jumped from 30% to 45%. So like there are people want to get the fuck
orgs, groups, whatever. It would be probably incredibly smart to start setting up funds to do that, because it's not free to get passports, and there's a lot of people that won't be able to afford one. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound alarmist or anything like that, but things happen
sounds
really
like an
fast.
alarmist.
And I also, I know it's rich for me to say like, fuck me, I'm a defector, but like, it's also, I understand that it's not everybody's intention to leave, and that it's a really heavy and complicated choice that EJ and I made when we were.
Yeah. I mean, I left for all the wrong reasons. And I came with all the wrong attitudes. Honestly, I was, it took a long time for me to wrap my head around.
I just mean that I don't really know how my political consciousness would have developed had I stayed in the United States. I don't say that for any reason other than I know that my travels and the advantages that I've had and the experiences that I've had have led to that. Do you know what I mean? In very real ways. But I don't know that had I never left, I think it would be, a heavy and complicated and difficult decision to make. And, the Pearl stances, we don't judge you,
of course.
But if you're thinking about leaving, it might get a lot harder soon.
Just to have it.
So we're just like a casual hour and 40 some minutes into this. And I thought you guys mentioned you did some books recently.
Luna has been translating for the last half decade, since we were like literally under lockdown for COVID. She has been translating the Vietnamese curriculum of the basic principles of Marxism-Leninism, which is one of the curriculae that the Vietnamese education system
that you just learn in regular fucking school, you guys. Can you fucking imagine? We were learning that the Pilgrims and the Indians killed a turkey together and grew corn.
Yeah.
And they are learning dialectical and historical materials.
And not just that, you have to pass all the exam to be able to graduate from your schools. If you fail any of those classes, you cannot get the graduation certificate.
It's but the curriculum itself, this is the curriculum that is designed for people who do not specialize in Marxism-Leninism. So it's actually the easier version. There's a longer version that would have taken half a decade just to do part one, probably. But so far, Luna has finished part one, which is on dialectical materialism, and part two, which is on historical materialism. And I don't think anybody in the world has finished reading part two yet. Because everybody we've talked to has said that they've started part two, but they haven't finished it yet. So you might be the first person to finish it. If you're listening to this right now, you have the opportunity to be the first person in the world to finish part two of this curriculum. It's like 600 pages total.
I do have like a specific, I don't know, Luna, if you want to like expand on this, but there was a part that like really, like it made connections in my brain that I've been like trying to work through, which is, so there's a section, I think it's the third chapter, where it's talking about how, like if you've read Marx, hopefully you've read Marx, you understand the concept of the base and the superstructure, where like, the base is the economic, whatever the dominant economic system is, and the superstructure is everything that's built on top of that, and they can act upon each other. Yes. Like the base determines the superstructure largely, but the superstructure can impact it. That. And there are holdovers from the previous, whatever the previous economic system was as well, whatever, it's complicated. But then there's a section that talks about the individual and how the consciousness is the superstructure, and the experience of the person themselves is the base. But the consciousness can have holdover concepts from like the past, and also can think about the future, because it's a difficult concept for me to think like, about agency in particular, because it like in my mind, it doesn't really matter that much, because your experiences, your material conditions quite often determine what you think and your beliefs that you hold, and but there are people who break out of that, and the idea that like some of us get beyond thinking in the ways that the capitalist system wants you to think, or that most people think and feel under the system of capitalism. Like, what explains the fact that some of us don't? What explains the fact that some of us are able to get beyond that? And like, I think like that was a very like making that connection in my head, like, oh, right, because like the consciousness is not purely tied to experience. It has power. It does have power beyond that experience.
Yep.
It's just that most people are going to think in a certain way because of the base that they have.
Because of the material condition determine what they can experience, and they don't know
Yeah.
better. But people with like exceptional kind of knowledge and even like imagination, we could receive that social consciousness. That is why we have a brilliant ideologist.
This is
brilliant
actually where
scientists.
this is great. I love that you brought this up, Jeremy, because this is maybe Marx's clumsiest and like most antiquated and confusing metaphor he used ever, which probably made plenty of sense if you were like a 19th century nerd and you were really into like cameras back then. But cameras just don't work that way anymore. But so, do you know the metaphor he uses about the camera obscura? So it's like he says, I'm very much paraphrasing and butchering what he said, but it's basically like, if we see things incorrectly, right? If we have like false consciousness about the world, it's kind of like how a camera obscura inverts the image. And so anytime anybody reads that, the first time I read that, I was like, what the hell is a camera obscura? And what is he talking about? Right. So we had to do all this research, and I had to like make a diagram in the book to show like how it, so basically like a camera lens, inverts the image. So like it'll be upside down, and that's a natural phenomenon. That's not like,
which I always thought that always made sense to me, because he also always says that he turned Hegel on his head.
Mhm.
And so I think that he's using the image that arose when he was drawing from the sources that were appropriate for him, that he was like, oh yeah, I see what you did there, except it needs to be like this.
Yeah.
And so like mentally, that's the same sort of psychosomatic experience that he had when he was understanding that which we would now call Marxism.
And the point he's basically making is that when we have false consciousness, it's because of material conditions. It's not like it's not contradicting materialism, because there were people that were making this argument that like, oh, because people's thoughts can like contradict with reality, that means that like consciousness is like severed off from material reality. And a lot of people, like they were engaged in this like big debate that was happening in Europe between like, oh, does matter determine consciousness? Does consciousness determine matter? Blah, 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 blah. And so the point is,
are the mind and the body separate? We have all of this sort of like Cartesian duality nonsense that is like, that a lot of people are imbibing.
And so he's basically saying that like, if you have false consciousness as a worker and you buy into the system of capitalism, all that means is that material conditions, objective conditions of capitalism have determined the way that you think. And it stands to reason, because the capitalists control the means of information production. They control the press, they control the media, they control entertainment, everything. So it makes sense that one of the things that Marx and Engels said all the time was that like the ideas of the ruling class in any epoch of society and any stage of development of human society are the ideas that determine the entire ideology of that era, right? So like under feudalism, the ideas of the feudal rulers, the monarchs and the nobles and everything, and the ecclesiastical class, they were the ones that determined the consciousness of everybody, including the peasants and everybody, right? Because they controlled the information production process. They controlled what the priests would be saying in the church and that sort of thing, the interpretation of the Bible, which was like, the religion was kind of like the media of the era, right? If you were going to church every Sunday, that was kind of like your big ideological programming session back then.
Literally, though, under the feudal period, news was delivered at church. You had to go to church, and at the church, they would read out new laws that were passed, things that were going to be happening in the community. It literally was the news,
and the
church
church,
the media.
This is so great, EJ. So far, you have mentioned both feudalism and loosely referenced MAGA communism, and these are like two things that will activate. These things would bring Jeremy back from the dead.
I'll keep that in mind. When Jeremy comes to visit Vietnam, if we have any emergencies, I'll just summon feudalism to revive. Anyway, but yeah, also
like
You just
uh,
be
like
like, these
like
crab
smelling
socks, and
like,
he's like,
like smelling salts. It just like
but the other thing is that the church were feudal lords. You know, that's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. Like the church had
yes,
fiefs, they had peasants, they had, you know, they were lords.
yes,
Yeah, they had serfs. And so like, right,
they had land.
the essential means of production of the feudal era. And so so it makes sense that most workers are not communists at this point, because social consciousness, class consciousness, has not developed to the point of revolutionary social consciousness in most of the world. One of the great things about places like Vietnam and Cuba is that they teach revolutionary class consciousness to everybody, right? And so that and that's why this curriculum, I think, is like so important, and why we, again, as Western, I presume that most of the people listening to this are probably, you know, in the imperial core. I know that a lot of you are not, but regardless,
yeah. It's like 85
Yeah.
or 90% of our listeners
Same with my
are
channel.
like the United States, Canada, Australia,
Luna's
New Zealand.
audience is awesome because they're like from all over. They're like from, you know, developing countries.
Nice.
I've been trying for so long.
I love that. I love that part.
And also my Vietnamese teacher now is a subscriber. She loves it.
Nice.
She asked me, we were like reading together, like in Vietnamese, we were reading like an article about Thailand and Cambodia in my lesson. And she was like, this is like, I just feel like it's so confusing to me. And I was like, I have a great video for you.
That's awesome. Yeah. But I mean, this text though, I mean, what I was saying is we have so much to learn from Vietnamese communists. And this text it breaks it all down in a way where they've taken, and by the way, the primary sources, you know, we've put as many in the annotations, we've put as many of the like longer passages from like Marx, Engels, Lenin, Ho Chi Minh into it's mostly Marx, Engels, and Lenin. There's not a lot of Ho Chi Minh in the book.
The annotations, the quote, like they're excellent.
Thank you.
These books are phenomenal.
We did, you know,
phenomenal.
Basically the litmus test was, can I understand it? Because I'm a American ding dong. I'm just like a basic American ding dong. Like really, you know, like I have no like background knowledge of any of this shit, right? So the litmus test was, can I understand
Was that the Kid Rock song?
and so anytime there was a passage in the original Vietnamese text where I was just like, what the fuck are they talking about?
The first book, oh my gosh, we were doing it in the first during the COVID lockdown, so it was pretty, you know, stressful already because of the material condition. We locked together in a house for months.
What material condition? EJ was the king of beef.
So
yeah, you guys are peeboos, basically.
So the actual translation from Vietnamese to English took me only around 6 months to finish, but the annotation took us more over a year.
Yep.
To really like, so nearly every single day in a year, we just sit together and argue about every single point of the book. So, for example, so at that time, I learned, I realized that, you know, the U.S. you just don't have any basic knowledge at all, because, okay, if you say this to any Vietnamese people, they would instantly nod their head. Matter determines consciousness. Like, yeah, of course, like, yeah, what else do I have to say about it? So in the book, when I say matter determines consciousness, and then EJ was like, why? How? No way, prove it. It was like, what the hell is wrong with you, dude? Like, isn't that obvious that matter determines consciousness?
Do we have any Kids in the Hall fans in the podcast? There's a great sketch, God is Dead. You can go look it up on YouTube if you're listening. But there's this really funny gag where these two philosophers pop up and they're like, no way, prove it. And Luna kept saying that I was that philosopher. Because that's what I kept saying over and over again.
Because
I was
you
like,
were
prove
like,
it.
I only know
But the
bald
funny
eagle
thing
and
is-
chicken wing. I do not know about consciousness.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
and like founding father.
What else is there?
ideology, you know,
I only know Mount Rushmore.
But it was very humbling though, because this is really what gave me confidence in this as a philosophy, because every single time I had an objection or a question or a doubt or whatever, Luna had a really solid answer that wasn't just like decent or like could work or whatever, but it was like a strong answer, you know what I mean? And that's what made me realize that this is like a very solid foundational philosophy for analysis. It is not perfect, and it admits that it's not perfect, right? Like,
We are waiting. We are waiting for the higher. Maybe they in the book it even said like there will be something better than dialectical materialism and historical materialism.
no, we are developing. It is developed. Like it's improved.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
way better than what Marx and Engels gave us already. Like there are things that Marx and Engels got wrong that, you know, Vietnamese communists and Cuban communists and Chinese communists,
Korean
like,
communists.
Soviet communists, Korean
Jew,
communists,
J,
and
Jew,
even
J.
some Western communists.
We just did an episode on well, part of it was on the Juche idea, and there are innovations within it that like we're like, wow, this is an improvement on the existing Marxist-Leninist concepts.
And then there are different parts, like there are some aspects of Juche that apply much better than North Korea and then would never work in Vietnam. So that's another thing, is that Ho Chi Minh thought is like the application of dialectical materialism and historical materialism and scientific social to the specific material conditions of Vietnam. And, in the USA, we can't just use Ho Chi Minh thought. We can't just pick it up and be like, okay, we're going to apply Ho Chi Minh thought, because that would be ludicrous, because our material conditions and our history of development are so different from what they have in Vietnam, right? So a lot of times people will try to be kind of well, a lot of anti-communists especially, but even some communists sort of try to collapse everything, and they try to say like, okay, well, everything North Korea does that's what communism is, and everything that Vietnam does, that's also what communism is. But they're doing like very different things, and they're doing some things, like Vietnam is making some mistakes that North Korea is not making, and then Vietnam is doing some things really well that North Korea is fucking up. You know what I mean? So it's like we can't look at it all as like this one, everybody's trying their best to develop, communism.
I mean, and if you are looking at the outcomes, you're not doing dialectical analysis, because the outcome itself is downstream of the thought and the intention and the analysis that is being applied, and whether or not it is being applied effectively, whether or not it is being criticized effectively, whether or not it is then being changed, right? It's a scientific process, right? So anyone who says that they think they know based on outcomes, unfortunately, is not doing
process. Is the key word there, right? That's a perfect word, process, because everything is in motion, right? That's one of the key points of dialectical materialism. And Vietnamese communists, I've talked to them, the first thing that they'll tell you is Vietnam is absolutely not anywhere near communist utopia. There are so many problems. There's so many contradictions that need to be resolved. Like, they know that. They're working through it. They're trying to improve things all the time. And they know that there are
That's why we are doing self-critique nearly every single day. That's why, because we know that we are the first baby step into socialism, and we know that we will make mistakes. And we do not have anybody that already gone before us to teach us. We are the one that like doing the favor for you.
Yeah.
That's
so
legit. It doesn't mean that
legit.
like we are cocky. Exactly. We're not like we arrogant or we cocky. We tell you like to do exactly what we did. No, we are showing you how, like we giving you lessons. Like, okay, we did this and we did it bad, or we did it good. You need to look at us and learn from us what we did right and what we did wrong, and to make sure that we do not make the same mistakes that we did. So yeah, we just like just a baby step into socialism, and it's already so much better than what's been going on in the US.
So here's a great case in point. Okay, this is again from the historical materialism book, and this is from I love I personally really love the appendices in this book, because I'm a big nerd about like primary sources, and I love to read like stuff that's just straight from the horse's mouth. So there's a lot of stuff that's from like Vietnamese communist like this is, what is this from? This is from the this is resolving the problems of the relationship between developing productive forces and gradually building and completing socialist relations of production to make sure they suit Vietnam's reality. Clickbait title, I know.
Ooh, zinger. Bars.
And it's by Dr. Lay, who's a member of the Communist Party, and it's basically like a self-critique, okay? And it says really clearly, this is from a Vietnamese communist talking about Vietnamese communism. In our country, Vietnam, in the period from the 4th Congress of 1976 through the years just before the 6th Congress of 1986 of the party, we suffered from the disease of being subjective, idealist, hasty, and stagnant due to a failure to observe objective laws, blah, blah, blah. And it just goes on and like talks about all the mistakes that they made. And they do that. They're going to do that right now. Like during the Congress, they're having the 14th Congress right now. And they're going to spend a lot of time critiquing themselves and critiquing each other and talking about what they fucked up. They will do that. And it's really amazing if you watch, I hope Luna will do more videos like this, honestly, because I think they're really eye-opening, where she just takes National Assembly meetings or whatever and like working committee meetings and stuff and just translates them so you can like see what they actually talk about. And they're like ruthlessly self-critical, and they critique each other, like, and it's totally flies in the face of that whole idea that like nobody can critique the government and nobody, like Luna has one video that was during COVID.
2.5
the index, right?
Democracy index.
Right. The democracy index it fails to account for the, like during COVID, there was a call-in show. Luna has a translation of it on her show where like the government was like having Vietnamese people, normal people just call in and like critique them. And there's like people calling in being like, hey, like they fucked up the food deliveries in my neighborhood and I need you to like take care of that, whatever. So like there's just this culture of critique and self-critique here that I think we need to internalize as communists in the West better.
And I think that something that is important, like in this historical moment, is like that you guys, I guess, can kind of help communicate and facilitate, is that we're going to need that international solidarity soon. And there's going to be a lot of humbling, I think, with Western communists, and things are going to get really dicey. And so all of this that we've been talking about and discussing this whole time, it's all going to become relevant in
the very near
future, I'd say, within the next, within
very
the next few
near.
years.
I think that a lot of people this is another thing. I mean, Luna and I get accused all the time of like just glazing Vietnam too hard, but part of it's because there's so much misinformation that we have to push back against. If somebody says one little lie about Vietnam, they could do that in 5 seconds, and then Luna has to spend a 45-minute video explaining why it's a lie, like with the Pew Research.
We've made a career off it.
Yeah. And so of course the amount of content she puts out that is like defending Vietnam, I think is just it stands to reason that it's going to be much like it's going to outweigh the stuff where she's critiquing Vietnam. But within all of the body of her work, she also critiques Vietnam. It's not.
We still have a poverty. We still have a bureaucracy, bribery, corruption.
Yeah. It's all there, but what the problem is that a lot of people that critique Vietnam, and especially a lot of Western communists who critique Vietnam, it's fine for you to critique Vietnam, but how about you actually talk to some Vietnamese communists, because they are out there, they're online. How about you read what the Vietnamese Communist Party is actually putting out? Because you might find, like I have, that a lot of the critiques that you have about Vietnam, they share.
Exactly. Here's the thing too. If your critiques are valid and it's true and it's real, we cheer, like, exactly, that is right. So like we are very well aware of our weaknesses and our, what we do bad. But if you just, lie about us, we would like fight against you, yes. But if your critique is true, then yes, we all agree with that.
And can I say one more thing? This is another, critique that I have of Western communism, is that we spend so much time. We believe that our ideas matter when we don't have any power, right? So it's like, it doesn't matter what it literally, if you're an American communist, even if you're like high up in a prominent national party, well, prominent is, but if you're in a national party and you don't have any power to have any influence over China, or Vietnam or Cuba or the DPRK or whatever, it's fine for you to like, you could hate those systems or whatever, but stop thinking that like your endless verbal and like online posting critiques matters until you build institutional power to where you could actually have influence and sway with those parties. I mean, there are Western
the fact that you're posting about it publicly is indicative that you don't. Throughout communist history, there has always been international solidarity and parties working from each other. So like we know if you're the guy or the person who's posting random shit about Vietnam from anywhere from Vietnam to Venezuela, that shows me that you do not have direct connections with comrades on the ground. Otherwise, you wouldn't be running your mouth publicly on the internet. You would be showing a unified front as part of a global communist movement. And then behind the scenes, in an appropriate context, you would be sharing criticism if your opinion was valid. The only reason these people are making this is because they have no real relationships. They have no real understanding. They're not plugged in to this network, and they are Western pseudo-Marxists.
Bravo.
I'm snapping. I'm doing
It's
the snaps.
and it's about to become irrelevant anyway.
Yeah. But if you want to have impact in the international communist movement, build up our institutions, build up our parties, build up our organizations, and get to the point where you can actually have some pull. Because right now you're screaming into the void and nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit what you think about Vietnam or China or whatever. Your opinion does not matter because you have no power.
It also, you should not be like taking the word of dissidents from within that country either. Like that's the sort of like insane thing to me, is like people will go, well, my friend who left China when he was like 8 years old says it was fucking terrible and everything was awful and it was authoritarian and they like took his parents' business or whatever. And like, well, yeah, those people are gonna hate China.
And also the country has changed. I mean, Luna has spoken about her own childhood where things were very, very different in Vietnam, and she was not lying and she was not incorrectly analyzing the moment, but her memory from 30 years ago is not particularly relevant.
I never thought about that. Yeah, like Luna, if your family left Vietnam when you were like 12, you would be like a great anti-communist propagandist, because you're like, seriously, your perspective would end in like the 90s and you would tell everybody you ever met, like, oh, Vietnam's really poor, it really sucks, we don't even have any fucking milk, like all the shit that you say, like that would be the terminus of your experience. And that's what everyone would, and especially as Americans, because we're metaphysical thinkers and we think of things as like static.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true though. Like the people will try to pretend like things have gotten better here in particular ways. Like they'll be like, oh, well,
I have 3 more cameras on my phone.
Well, but what I mean is like they'll be like, oh, well, we used to have segregation in schools and now we've integrated and so now everybody has equal opportunities or whatever. And you go, okay, but like schools are still segregated. They're just not segregated legally. They are institutionally segregated. And like, they will, I don't know. We don't really need to talk about it, but like, this is
100%. That's a really good point.
It's static here, and anything that changes for the better gets.
What are you talking about? Capitalism breeds innovation.
It immediately gets like rolled back, pulled back, defunded, destroyed in one way or another, so that things basically go back to the way they were, or so close to the way they were that it makes no functional difference. Materially, there's no difference.
But one of the reasons why I think it's so important to read, like part 1 of the Dialectical Materialism book, right, is because it, if you do what the book says, then it demands that we have a historical and comprehensive perspective. Luna and I talk about this as often as we can on our channels, because that's the key to really deprogramming ourselves from all this bullshit. Because like the historical perspective means you're looking at things as processes in motion. As Ray said, like a process. Everything is a process in motion. Everything is changing all the time, right? And you're looking at the historical development that led to the conditions we're in right now. And comprehensive means you're looking at all the different relationships, right? So with dialectical materialism, we define things by internal and external relationships. And with Vietnam, for instance, when like I think Jeremy, you're talking about like if you're talking to somebody who moved away from Vietnam when they're like 11. That is a data point, right? That is one relationship with Vietnam that you can identify, and you can take that into consideration. That's everyone has some valid truth to share with whatever phenomena we're talking about, right? But you can't just essentialize that one data point. And that's another thing that the dialectical materialism methodology talks about, is like the difference between essence and phenomena. You're going to have a lot of phenomena there's communist phenomena, or like, socialist phenomena in the USA, right? Like there are phenomena you could say, and people have tried to make the argument.
Yeah, it's Justin and Jeremy.
We can make
just the two of us.
But right wingers will say, "Oh, the USA is socialist. That's the problem. We've turned into a socialist country, right?" Right wingers will say that, and they'll hyperfixate on all this phenomena. Like, okay, we have like whatever Medicaid for a handful of people, and we have like Social Security, and they'll say that's socialism, and that's why America's
I can give you, because of the historical moment that we're in right now, EJ, I can give you a concrete example of this exact thing happening right now. They being the Justice Department, is investigating I think the largest or one of the largest teachers unions in the United States, because they say they have donated $2 million to far leftist organizations. And those far leftist organizations are like people trying to put like diversity in the images inside of children's literature. And as we know, as educators, I'm going to school for educating, that children's self-identity is formed in those years, and they need to see themselves in order to see themselves as part of the world. It is a thing that has been studied and proven over and over and over again. That is what they are doing, and they'll probably succeed, right? We're in that moment, right? They will probably succeed and absolutely shut down this teachers union, which is already gutted. And yeah, and that's your concrete example of what you're talking
It's
about.
already optional to join the teachers union in many states. Colorado is one of them, which is insane to me.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends in South Carolina that are teachers, and it's dire. It's been really bad in South Carolina for since I was a child, but it's just really bleak right now. So solidarity to all of our teachers.
Yep.
Everywhere. It's definitely that institution is under. I mean, I don't even know if you say under attack anymore. It's basically like being dismantled. So
yeah, it is
being turned into just. I mean, like they have fucking Turning Point USA in public schools now. I mean, that's like so wild to me. Part of the curriculum.
I forgot about that. Oh my goodness.
But we do have we have students that contact us all the time, and if you're a student and you want to copy the book, first of all, the ebooks are always free. And we also have, if you're in this is something we wish people would take advantage of more often, but if you're in an organization or a book club or something like that, and you want to buy like copies for all the members or whatever, hard copies, I mean, we'll give you like a discount or a scholarship or something. Just let us know what your situation is and we'll help you out. We've had a lot of students that, can't afford a copy of the book. So we've sent them out, we have, limitations. We wish we could give everybody I wish we could give everyone in the U.S. a free hard copy of the book, but let us know your situation and how we can help, and we'll do our very, very best to try to help you. But also, the ebook is totally free, so check that out if you'd like. Bannionhouse.org/shop. The part 1 it focuses on dialectical material. So this is, I think, it's really important if you're kind of new to Marxist theory and philosophy to understand what all these different base level terms mean. And dialectical materialism is the most universal philosophy, and it deals with the relationship between consciousness and matter that we talked about a little bit earlier. And it talks about development and how things develop. And that's something that I think if we could just get the working class in the West to understand development processes better, that in and of itself would be a huge victory, because the way we've been conditioned to think of things is like, I think that like Hollywood montages have completely fucked up our perspective of how like doing any kind of long-term project works, because we first of all need to determine what works and what doesn't through practice, not through just sitting around in a room and arguing with each other, but like through actually doing shit, see what works and what doesn't. But we also have to realize that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to fail, and we should learn. That's something Fred Hampton said all the time, was that if you make a mistake, it's a good thing because you learn from it, which is like the scientific method, right? I mean, anybody who's studied science knows that like it's a good thing when you have a hypothesis and you are actually wrong because you've learned something. That's the whole point of science. Yeah. This is a science that we're talking about.
Ho Chi Minh also said, another quote from Ho Chi Minh is that we are not afraid of making mistake. What we should be afraid is we make mistake and then we don't fix it.
Yes. He also said it's better to act than to do nothing. Like if you have the choice between acting and maybe being wrong and doing nothing, because you learn from acting and doing, you'll learn from that outcome. So anyway, so that's what dialectical materialism is. It's a baseline philosophy, and you can use dialectical materialism to analyze literally anything. And unironically, this is objectively, it's funny, but it's also true that Luna and I, in our personal relationship and in our marriage, have applied dialectical materialism. And we have actually we've used it to like improve our relationship. And like she was joking earlier about the material conditions of the lockdown during COVID, but like that got us through like so many situations where like we're stuck in a room together and we're like, okay, the material conditions are causing us to have like social friction right now. I need to go for a walk right now. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like,
it's like, I don't take you. I'm depressed because of the material conditions around me right now. So don't get me wrong. I'm pissed.
Right, right. And so, yeah, that's dialectical materialism. And then historical materialism is the application of dialectical materialism to human society. And so it's understanding how human society has developed, how human society exists right now, and how revolutions come to be. Yeah, that's we've derived that by applying dialectical materialism to human society. So dialectical materialism can be used to study anything, right? You can use it to study like cooking or whatever. But historical materialism can only be applied to the study of human society and human history.
And this is one thing that I recently realized, that in the West you use the term class consciousness a lot, and I try to find that same term in Vietnamese philosophy, Marxist specifically. And I realized that actually in Vietnamese, we do not use the term class consciousness as frequently. We use the historical mission of the working class. So that is the same thing. In the West, you use class consciousness. In Vietnamese, we say understand the historical mission of the working class.
Yeah.
So that is the point of historical materialism. Know who you are, know your power, and know what you can do, and know what you should do to bring about the revolution. And the next one would be the political economy, is teach you how to know how capitalism functions and how communism can fight against capitalism. So we have a saying in Vietnam 4,000 years old, is like, understand your enemies, understand yourself, you will win every battle. So that is the point of the third book that I'm working on right now, is in order to fight and win against capitalism, you have to understand how it works first. You must understand your enemy. You can't fight them blindly. That is why, like, it is a condensed version of Capital Volume 1, 2, 3 by Marx and Engels, and also the Lenin's work on imperialism. So get ready for
That should
it.
be out sometime in the next 1 to 5 years.
And the last one in my plan would be scientific socialism. It is about, after you understand dialecticalism, after you understand historical materialism, and after you have the revolution, how to run a state after that. That is the part about scientific socialism. Means that we are building socialism not just blindly, not just an idealist kind of way. We're building it scientifically. So that's going to be the last part.
As you were speaking, I was really sort of meditating on the linguistic differences and the function of using this language of historical mission of the working class, and like the reason that this becomes less relevant in the belly of the beast. And part of this is like the nature of imperialism. I've spoken about this before. The nature of imperialism harms, of course, those who are colonized, but it also, in a different way, harms those of us living within the belly of the beast, right? And part of this, the violence that perpetuates the existence of our states and everything on which our lives have been built and predicated, requires a certain degree of amnesia. Or I've spoken before about this as a sort of feeling orphaned. I think that one of the things that Stalin did very well, that the Soviets did really well, was try to reclaim the industrialized work sites as a site of sort of like reconnected from the sort of severed indigeneity that we all experience as the sort of like primal wounding of imperialism. And I think that like really take this seriously, listeners, if I may. The historical mission of the working class, do not allow the blunt violence of imperialism to obfuscate the fact that your working class has also had the same historical mission. It's just that you benefited differently from the violence that was inflicted on, people like Luna and her ancestors. So if I can just say that. In closing, I've heard you both speak so much about revolutionary optimism. You put out a beautiful, beautiful video. I don't know if you had any final closing words on the value and the importance of connecting to and upholding a worldview of revolutionary optimism in this specific, really challenging moment.
Revolutionary optimism is very, very important concept that was developed by Ho Chi Minh and his comrades, and literally it was the thing that held us together in our darkest time. So in the time that Vietnam was fighting against colonialism, after 100 years of occupation and colonization. And then immediately imperialism. It's beyond imagination. Like over 90% of our people didn't know how to read and write. We just faced like a famine, a starvation in 1945 because of the fascist Japanese and also the colonialist France. So you can imagine that we were in a desperate time with just no hope at all. Our people were dying every single day, and revolutionary optimism was the only thing that kept us together and kept us, we kept fighting because of it. Revolutionary optimism is not blind optimism. It's a kind of optimism when you know who you are, where you are at, what situation you are dealing with, know the dire hard truth you're facing with, but at the same time, you know that the strength of your society, the strength of the working class, and the historical mission of the working class is to end exploitation, oppression, all and forever, to liberate the whole humanity. And we know that we have that power to do that, and we will do it eventually. So that is the revolutionary optimism that helped Vietnamese people going through the darkest time in our history, and we freaking did it. My grandpa was one of them. He joined the military in the 60s in the worst time when Vietnam had to fight against the imperialist USA. And he died in the Tet Offensive in 1969 when my dad was 10. The Tet Offensive was like the darkest time in the war we had against USA, and we saw no future at all. But millions of us still joined and fight. And my grandpa died without knowing that there would be any possibility that his children can live in peace or not, but he still did it because of that revolutionary optimism that we had. So, and because of his sacrifice, that his own granddaughter, me, can live in peace. And that is why Vietnam can thrive today. So you're fighting not just for yourself, you're fighting for also your future generations, your children. That is very important. That is the historical mission of the working class. And I think that with the situation is going on in US right now, revolutionary optimism is the only thing that you can cling on right now. Believe in yourself, believe in the strength of the working class, and believe that one day your people can liberate from the oppression and exploitation. And you must not live in it blindly. You need to learn dialectical materialism, historical materialism, to understand who you are, as I said, who you are, who's your enemy, and how to defeat them in the future. And know that you don't need to believe it. You know that you have the power. Until you unite together, the power will arise and you can defeat it. And you're fighting not just for you yourself, not just for the USians, not just for your people, you're fighting for us Vietnamese too, because we did our part. We won against imperialism, US imperialism, we kicked them out. Now it's your part to fight in the belly of the beast. You're fighting for the whole humanity because you are our biggest and only hope, because it's your fight right now to fight against capitalism.
Yeah. When you were talking about like your grandfather fighting without knowing, sorry, it's making me a little bit
yeah, it's a lot.
You guys now I'll make fun of you for crying.
Yeah, sorry.
When I was crying, it was really hilarious.
Without knowing whether it was going to be successful, without knowing whether like his children or his grandchildren were going to live in peace. Like it is.
I mean, Ho Chi Minh died in 1969.
It's the same year. My grandpa died the same year.
Yeah, so he didn't even know,
Yeah.
For sure what was going to happen.
And this is like I've said this quote. It's my favorite quote. I think maybe anything outside of like socialist related stuff is even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. Like it doesn't matter whether we're going to succeed. We still have to try. And it's not just physically fighting in a war, although that is probably going to be necessary, almost certainly going to be necessary. It's everything else. It is educating your neighbors. It is helping to feed your community. It is, it is making the connections that will allow you to to build socialism in the future. All of these things have to be done, and someone has to do it, and it might as well be fucking you. So, like, yeah, it shouldn't be for you. You shouldn't be doing this because you think you are going to achieve socialism. You need to be doing it so that your children and your grandchildren can live in peace.
And this is from Ho Chi Minh's Last Will and Testament, which he wrote for Vietnamese communists and communists around the world on May 10th, 1969. I'm just going to read the part about the world communist movement. He said,
just 4 months before his death.
He said, about the world communist movement, being a man who has devoted his whole life to the revolution, the more proud I am of the growth of the international communist and workers' movement, the more pained I am by the current discord among the fraternal parties. I hope that our party will do its best to contribute effectively to the restoration of unity among the fraternal parties on the basis of Marxism-Leninism and proletarian internationalism in a way that conforms to both reason and sentiment. I am firmly confident that the fraternal parties and countries will have to unite again. And that's where I think we in the West really need to do a lot of work in getting to know, like, we have the internet now, folks. Like, it's not 1969 anymore. We can go and talk to communists in China and Vietnam and get their perspective and find out, you know, what they actually believe. We don't have to get all of our information by way of, like, you know, the capitalist media anymore. Build human relationships. Most countries in the world have parties and organizations and youth leagues that have some kind of fraternal solidarity association with some kind of socialist organ in Vietnam or Cuba or China or whatever. Like, there are ways to not just communicate with, but work with and build with people in other social movements and with other social movements in other Western countries as well. Like we need to redevelop internationalism, because the ruling class has systematically, intentionally broken down a lot of the bonds that we used to have, that used to be a lot stronger among the workers of the world. And that's something where I think we have a lot of work to do, and it's very important that we start doing it.
Well, when Lenin famously said there are podcasts when weeks happen, this is what he meant. That about does it for this one. Keep listening after the outro for a preview of the Patreon exclusive bonus episode. Thank you so much to Luna and to EJ and to all of our listeners and Patreon subscribers. The newest ones are Joel C., Tyler, Gio O., Moss F. 1983, and Zane. And a very special shout out to our Vanguard patrons, Jordan C., Class Antagonism, Audie Gem, The Leninist Lawyer, B., Lil Lumpenprol, The Winking Cossack, Better Read Than Liberal, and Alex D. Once again, if you'd like to subscribe, you can do so at patreon.com/pearlspod for free. If you have questions, comments, or episode ideas, please email us at pearlspod@outlook.com. Please follow, review, like, all the algorithm stuff, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. May the specter haunt your streets and solidarity forever. Death to France. There's an excellent American barbecue place in Saigon.
Yeah.
And
are you talking about Oot Oot?
Yeah. Going, oh, oh.
Oot Oot is, yeah, it's
That's
so good.
So
It's made by a Charlestonian, by the way.
One you can use, like, you know, neighborhood or whatever. Oh, oh, is like the onomatopoeia for oink, oink, like what pigs do. And when my father came to Vietnam, we, I might have told this. I have told you guys this story, but I don't know if we were recording or not. We all told my dad that it was a horse restaurant. My dad is like an
like a restaurant for horses, or like they serve
but it was like a horse that they served barbecued horse. at this restaurant, and it's just dead ass delicious American barbecue. And even Tiao, my roommate, she was in on it too. Like everyone was in on it. She came downstairs, and I was like, "Oh, we have our table at tonight. Are you going to be there?" And she was like, "Oh, it's Tuesday. They have the cat appetizer half off. Of course, I'll be there." And my dad was so nervous, and then he got there and he loved it. It was very delicious. But he was a really good sport about it because now he's a huge fan, loves Vietnam. Thought all the food was really good, so he was like, "Well, everything else is good. I guess if they eat horse, they must make it nice somehow."
Does he believe that to this day?
Oh my god!
No. Once we got there, because they have they're like American barbecue, and like obviously like you've seen a picture of my dad, right? He's very obviously not Vietnamese,
right.
And so they brought him like the English menu and stuff like that. He just ordered like
you could have if you took a couple extra steps, you could have totally. They probably have like a Vietnamese only menu or something, or.
But like, God bless him, he was like really. He was like, okay, everything else was nice. I bet. They probably have a really nice sauce. Yeah, he is so nervous around new foods. Like, God bless him, but he was like, well, they make everything else good. I guess I don't really like rice, and that rice was good. So I guess maybe I bet they do a good job. That's what he kept saying. I bet they'll do a good job.
They do a good horse in Ho Chi Minh City.
Amazing.